Hey there, this is the Great Jew Atheist, and you are watching podcast number 12. Um, today's topic is evolutionary psychology, and please like this video, comment on it, and you can reach me at the Great Jew Atheist, not the Great Jew Atheist at gmail.com. The subtopic for today is how does evolutionary psychology see friendship? Okay, and we'll see why friendship isn't what you think. And there's a lot of background. I'm also going to go into some other stuff. I could keep it very short, just talk about friendship. But, one of the things a lot of you don't know much about evolutionary psychology, and you're going to be learning a lot today. So this is a very good podcast. First, I'm going to talk about a man who's well hated, Darwin's bulldog, and his name, and I love this guy because he's a genius. And what makes him a genius is he's a genius because he doesn't kowtow to the religious right, Muslims, or any group who fosters these irrational beliefs. And his name is Richard Dawkins. And Richard Dawkins was born in 1941. And in 1971, at the age of 30, he wrote a book called The Selfish Gene. And he even coined the word that is used on the internet a lot, a meme. Okay? And The Selfish Gene was a groundbreaking book. Now, he didn't come up with the idea. I believe it was an English guy, Robert Trivers. He came up with the idea of the selfish gene. He didn't call it a selfish gene. He used a mathematical, very complicated mathematical. You could spend years trying to understand them. Maybe not. Maybe 1 year, and you'd have to learn a lot of math to. It could be understood. I probably can understand it because I'm a genius and you're not. Okay, not really, but. So Dawkins popularized the idea of the selfish gene. It's a good read. One of the opening page is just amazing, and he says something like millions and millions of species, millions and millions of animals and plants have walked the animals. Plants don't walk the earth. Have walked the earth, never wondering why they did, until one of them found out why. And his name was Charles Darwin, and he did this in 1859. And there were many, and ever since Darwin, that's actually a book by Stephen Jay Gould. There's many, have been many things, and there's many ideas on evolution since Darwin. Darwin was a real genius. I mean, to not know how evolution really worked, just to see it, not to know its specifics. And what he did, as time went on, they discovered things like DNA and genes, genetics, and Dawkins popularized this idea that, it used to be something called group selection, that animals would be do for the good of the group, They would do what was advantageous, this fucking mosquito, for the good of the group. And Dawkins was in the camp, and he read this paper by Robert Trivers, another guy, I think W.D. Hamilton. I think Trivers is actually American, and W.D. Hamilton was a Brit. And their basic thing was things didn't work on a group level; they worked on the gene level, and this was revolutionary. And to this day, 2018, there's still a dispute. Although I think most people are in the gene level camp at this point. I don't know what the ratio is, but I believe most people are in the gene level camp now. So you take a gene, and any group of genes, and human beings have 23 set of chromosomes, 23 set of chromosomes, 23 set of chromosomes, 2 chromosomes each, right? make 46 in total. And we have about 20,000 genes, I believe, although I'm reading a book now by Adam Rutherford, A Brief History of Everyone Who Ever Lived, and he said something like 10,000, but there's 10,000 to 20,000, give or take. And so Dawkins talks about how genes are immortal, okay? They never die. They make copies of themselves, and they're immortal. They keep going on, they keep going on. We are the carriers. We carry them. That's all we are, Everything is like a lion, a cockroach. That's all they do. All we do is carriers, and they make us as best we can. They make us as best we can so we can replicate them, because they can't replicate themselves. They need a carrier and a replicator, right? A survival machine, right? And we are that. We are mortal, and genes are immortal, okay? And that's what we do. We're just used to make more genes. And once we're done, once we're given, the genes give us a fair amount of time. And by the way, the genes would like us to make as many copies as we can, And once we're done, I guess they can only give us a certain amount of time. I don't know why. These are good questions. They're all good questions. Why doesn't a gene give us 1,000 years? Why does it only gives us, maybe at most 70 to 90 years. Some people live to 120. I don't think they can reproduce well. So maybe reproduction is limited to about 90 years. Especially in a male and a female, maybe 50 years. Maybe there's been a woman who had a baby at 59. So, and then once they're done, they get rid of us. We die. Usually the body breaks down at that point. That once we no longer needed, the gene no longer has any use for us. It withdraws all these great defenses against pathogens that it's created. The arteries no longer become flexible. They harden, and we just die. And we go to funerals, and life sucks, but they don't really care, So it's sad, but it's funny. We're probably the only species that has ever thought about that. Chimpanzees don't think about that. We're the only species that's thought about art and getting high and being happy and having children and being successful, and we're the only ones that thought of that. Now it's important. It's important, and how it's important to leave something, and so we're the only animal that really thinks about that. But the reality is, we're the equal of anything on this planet. Every animal has genes, except maybe viruses. They use something different. They use RNA instead of DNA. So the real truth is sad, but if you think about it, you're just as good in God, quote unquote, eyes as a tree, but we've come over across the bridge where now we could see that we have something that's different. We can see, friendship and good times and parties and family and sex is very pleasant. I wish I could have it. It would be nice. And smoke a little weed. That could be nice. Again, I don't like weed. I don't know why. Again, God being cruel. God's being really cruel. I smoke weed and I love it. And I'm a born-again Christian. God said, take upon all the herbs of the earth and use them as you may. Okay? Okay, so Dawkins made this book, a very influential book, and the camp the worm has seemed to turn. There are some group selectionists still that say selection is made by the group. The group determines what genes are important, not the individual. But I think at this point, Dawkins, who popularized this notion, most geneticists believe the individual is more important. Okay, now The EEA, in one of my earlier podcasts, I didn't remember what the first E was, like a dickhead, but now I know what it is. EEA stands for Environment of, oh yeah, okay, I know what it is. EEA stands for Environment of Evolutionary Adaptation, right? But that's a fancy term for all human life save the last 11,250 years, okay? So when we talk about EEA, that means almost all human life, we walk this planet, which we were hunter-gatherers. That's just a quick, so I don't have to go hunter-gatherers, you know? Um, Now, you might say, well, what were the other 11,250 years? And those are the most recent. And we'll say after the hunter-gatherer, which is, period, which was the EEA, which we'll call EEA for any future podcast starting now, there was farming. Okay, so we became farmers, which became much more efficient, a much more steadier source of food. Famines were very common in the EEA. By the way, we adapted most of our brain in the EEA, probably all of our brain. So we're facing this modern planet with the EEA, which is a good thing. So 11,000 years, we were pretty much a farm society. And then in the last, let's say 250 years, we've hit the Industrial Revolution. Okay, so so this is like a lead up, a little primer to what we're going to get at later, which is not too long. I wanted to get a little length to it. It's kind of like your professor has like a little topic, and he wants to add and like cushion it so make it last 50 minutes. But this is interesting background stuff. Now, let's talk about the EEA and how did it work. Now, the nice thing about the EEA is it was an egalitarian society. It's pretty much equal. But there was some kind of separation of classes. It was a little bit. Now, the first thing you had was called the in-group and the out-group. Now, the in-group was the thing you had to be in because if you were in the out-group, you could not survive. I mean, maybe you could survive a few days, but eventually it would be over. And what does it mean? The in-group is the tribe, and the out-group is mean you get kicked out or cast off. You're cast off. Now, these days, you can survive somehow. You might be able to work a job. You might be a loner or something. You might be one of these people in Alaska. You might be able to survive on the land. Theodore Kaczynski survived quite a long time and might have survived quite longer, if not his brother turning him in, the Unabomber, right? So these days, with modern, conveniences, you can survive in the out-group, but in the EEA, you could not, because in the EEA, if you're in the out-group, you would most likely succumb at some point to predation. There were big predators back then, no matter where you are. If you lived in the Americas, for example, the American lion would probably take you down at some point, or the saber-toothed tiger. You wouldn't last long. And there was hunger, again, famines were very common, so you may make it 3 months, 6 months, who knows. They might have had a Guinness Book of World Records back there. The guy who lasted the longest in the out-group. So it was very important to be in the in-group. So you're in the in-group, hopefully, so you're not got cast off it. By the way, a lot of our behaviors are the result of wanting to be in the in-group, and we'll talk a little bit more about the in-group. So I want to stay in the in-group. You don't want to be in the out-group. A little aside now about humans. Humans are the most successful large mammal on the planet today. There are about I think my friend was saying 7.7 billion of us, and that's quite a large number. But success could kill us in many ways. One way it could kill us is a virus, and this probably will happen at some point. There's going to be a virus that's going to be able to take advantage of such large numbers living in such close quarters. And at some point, this could, I'd say, it's just a matter of time. You got so many people living in such small areas, and it's not stopping, and it's just another is the religious virus, I call it. Um, there's crazy religions out there. There's fundamentalists, and there's Islam. At some point, they want Armageddon. They want to meet at Megillah in Israel, and they believe that the war of all wars will bring the Messiah, because it says in the book of Revelation, and once that happens, there'll be a paradise on earth, or I don't know. I don't know. Um, it's bad. um, Now, how do people get to that point? I guess life sucks. I mean, that's the problem. If life didn't suck so much, people would never get to that. I mean, if life was a little longer and you're younger, and like everyone looked like Kim Kardashian or Bradley Cooper, and, or good. I'm gonna say everyone looked the same, and you didn't age till about 80. You're pretty good looking. You look like Sean Connery until you're like 90 or whatever. And no one was starving, and everyone got together, and men were able to take multiple wives. Things would probably work out much better. But my theory is, it's that life sucks, and people just become deluded. I mean, it's just crazy, crazy stuff. I mean, how can you be they dilute, and a lot of people hold. It's not like there's one person that believes, oh, the book of Revelation is going to tell you what's going to happen. It's going to go on down in Megillah, Israel, where everything is, the world's going to come to an end, and rapture's going to come, and the army's going to all meet, and it's just so fucking bizarre. It's just, and it's scary. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to live anyway. I don't want to live too long anyway, unless something changes really drastically. And I'm actually doing really good, I think. I got my new mattress. Let me show you. And and I'm doing really good. I'm coming up with good things. I'm going to my group. I'm noticing I'm going there. I'm wearing sweatpants and t-shirts, but I'm going to start dressing up a little better this week. It's Tuesday through Saturday, so I'm going to take it more like a job. I'm going to wear a collared shirt every day, and pants and shoes. And then I'm going to, next week, it's a little hot this week, so I don't want to start. Also, I'm going to go to my sobriety group, so I'm going to try to add an activity every week that's going to challenge me more. So, little aside there. Okay, let's get back to the thing. Now, let's talk about the in group. So, hopefully in the EEA, you're in the in group, because you're in the out group. Again, loners could survive. Now, maybe in the EEA, you could survive in the out group, Well, the out group has its politics, though. And the in group, has its politics. And that could be troublesome, too. So, you had to know your place. And so basically, the in group, most of the people were somewhere in the bottom, in the middle, and, fighting, it's like we're all fighting, the blacks and whites are fighting, while the rich white people are at the top and laughing. So that's what basically happened. And, the alpha male and the other high-ranking alpha male and females, and the other high-rating males and females were at the top, right? And, they basically knew where they were, and, every once in a while they'd had to fight it out, once in a while maybe one of the other top-ranking males and females made a power play, but they were pretty comfortable, I would gather. They had they pretty much had their food, and they pretty much had their food and their power. So there probably wasn't much reason, because again, the equalness of each of the levels, probably wasn't worth it to make a challenge, because that could have ended up in death. So it wasn't really worth it. And it's funny, a lot of, you go to these groups, and these psychologists say, oh, you got to raise your self-esteem. That's a funny thing. A lot of studies have said that criminals and murderers and psychopaths have very high self-esteem. They found this all out through studies, and having good self-esteem is probably not a good idea, especially in the lower end of the group. You start challenging some of the higher members of the group, you get you might get killed at best. You might be cast out of the group, and you're they call it cast off, right? You're out of the group, right? You get kicked out of the group. You haven't done your job. What's your job? Shut the fuck up. Stay where you are. So the in-group, right, it's good to know your place in the group, where you are. Like, you're probably either in the high part of the group. Again, if you're high part of the group, it's not worth it. If you're not the very top, but you're still high, it's probably, you're getting your food. Again, it's probably with challenges, but yeah, in the middle of the group, you know your place, and you probably were okay. If you're low in the group, you might, one of the things talk about is the idea of population pressure. Probably some of the lower people of the group were the people who try to leave the group, maybe as a group set up new groups, right? And then they had a whole new group, and they had high people in the group, and they had middle and low, right? And they talk about, one book I read, it's called Evolutionary Psychiatry, and they said this might have been the reason for schizophrenia, because it would take a deluded person in the group to actually be crazy enough to think that, in a population pressure situation where it was getting to the point where there wasn't, in the low end of the group, of the in-group, well, these are the people that would be the ones that had to move on, and it would take one of the members to be deluded enough and crazy enough to say, let's move somewhere else, and he would have to hear voices, and he'd hear the voices, and he would say, I heard the word of the Lord. It's funny, isn't religion just schizophrenia in disguise? So those are just some interesting, not really anything to do with friends, but interesting points. Now let's talk about kin selection and altruism. Now, altruism is giving someone resources, thereby lowering your ability to provide resources to yourself, right? If you give someone some of your resources, you have less resources. Generosity or altruism is a good quality, but if you have resources, you have less, and you might not always have them. Now, many times people give their resources to their kin without anything in return, like your children. And one of the reasons you give them to your children is because your children have your genes, right? And they generally have one half of your genes, I would hope. People do not like giving resources to children who are not theirs. And at a later podcast, we will talk about that. Brothers and sisters also have half your genes, but and one of the conundrums is you tend not to give as many resources to your brothers and sisters, even though they do technically have the same number of genes as your children. And that's a really good question as to why. And this is one of the holes, I said, in evolutionary psychology. And there are others too. So as a theory, but it doesn't all break down. And there are others too. This is one of them. And this is one of them I'm working on for my PhD. No, I'm just kidding, but it's one that, I'd like to go to UC Santa Barbara, and hopefully someone watching this from UC Santa Barbara will put me up to do a thesis on this. And I have several ideas, and so if you're from UC Santa Barbara, I'm going to put this in my tags, University of California, Santa Barbara thesis. And hopefully someone will be watching and get me the fuck out of here. But let's say I can't come up with a thesis. I'm in a big pile of doo-doo. Okay, so, and then how do you come up with this? At every source. So my nieces and nephews, they're 1/4 of my genes. Why? Well, it's just a process of multiplying fractions. My brothers and sisters are half, and their children are half. 1/2 times a half is 1/4. And my cousins are 1/8. Well, why? My parents are half to me. their brothers and sisters are half, and their children are half to them. Half times a half times a half is 1/8. So as you go further, you see there's a 1/8 is a 16.5%. So as you go further, it becomes they have less of my genes, and the less further related. In fact, I have cousins who, I remember this one cousin, I won't name him, cousin Harris, that I remember I tried to get in touch with him just to say hi, and I said, "Hi, cousin Harris," and he says, "Who gave you my email address?" Kind of a dick, kind of a dick. He is a dick. I was a kind of, so if cousin Harris, you're listening, you're a dick. I get it. He's a smart guy, though. I'll give him that. I guess. And that's an interesting thing. Eighth of your genes, you would figure if someone has 16% of your genes, it's just a good number. Wouldn't they be more generous and caring? And no. And, I have series on that. And see, our environment we live in right now is much different than the EEA. So someone you see every day, you would think is more related to you. And if you don't see them, that's how you know someone is related to you. So I have theories on that too. And someone you don't see often, you don't think is related to you. Even though you know they're your cousin, you don't think they're related to you. And so you need to see them and physically know them too. And I didn't know this cousin Harris. I'd maybe seen him 10 times in my whole life, maybe not that. So, so the more closer you are related to someone, theoretically, you would be more altruistic, and you're more altruistic, and altruistic means the altruism is one that would lower your, you would give resources up without expecting stuff in return, and this could put you in a bad situation theoretically, because you might need those resources and they might not be there. Now, friends are an interesting thing because friends do not have genes in common, or don't have a lot of genes. Although this is interesting, I was raising this with a guy at work, and he said something interesting. He said, "Well, how do you know the friends don't have genes?" My best friend actually has, on his father's side, Ukrainian blood, and I am a Jewish from Ukraine. He's Jewish from Ukrainian. So there could be some, and we see each other a lot, and we're really good friends. So I think there is a possibility that, those two things have to be there. You have to see the person a lot, and they have to have a common gene with you. And once those two things are there, I think it adds up more, So you might have some common genes with your friends more than you think. And why, but altruistically, there's no kin selection. So why would someone give something to their friends? Well, there's something called reciprocal altruism. Reciprocal altruism. And reciprocal altruism is the idea, I give to you, you give to me, right? The old thing, right? Exchanges, right? So I give to you, you give to me. And this is it's a social contract, an agreement. I give to you, I expect, I helped you out with something, I fix your car, and, I don't say, don't worry about it. But in my head, I'm like, you better fucking fix me up that hot chick, your girlfriend's friend, I know, get me a date, you fucking better work on that, you promised, and you better, and if you don't, I'm gonna fucking be pissed off. So exchanges. Now, if you don't come through, I'm going to be pissed off, Or, and an exchange doesn't have to be a material thing, of course. A lot of times they're material things. You get, like, let's say, again, I fix your car, and all of a sudden one day you come to me, hey, I got tickets to the Yankee game. Bingo, you've made your exchange. And this is what friends do. Again, it just could be something, having a shoulder to cry on. Women do that often. So, one thing people look at is the exchange fair, okay? Is the exchange fair? That's an interesting point. Um, is the exchange fair? So here's an example. I thought, and at the time, I didn't realize until I read The Moral Animal by Robert Wright. Again, good pickup. Goes more into this reciprocal altruism. And first of all, I didn't realize it was reciprocal altruism. And second, I was thinking maybe this friend of mine didn't think the exchange was fair. Basically, I was at my old place. I was in East Elmhurst, New York, and I just started hanging out with this guy Stu, who's a police officer. And what had happened was he was coming home from the airport, and my friend Sam was picking him up. So I was a Super Bowl, and we were having a Super Bowl party at my apartment in East Elmhurst, and it was right near LaGuardia Airport. You could see the planes pretty much. You could touch the planes. That's how bad it was. It was really right in the flight path of LaGuardia Airport. And so he came over and he says, so I gave him a couple of slices of pizza, and then he said to me, Dave, do I owe you anything? I said, no, what are you kidding me? Just a couple of slices, 3 slices of pizza. Yeah, 2 maybe, I don't know. So the next thing I know, he's giving me a PBA card. Now, I don't know. At the time, I thought, oh, that was nice. I didn't expect a PBA card. A PBA card, for those who don't know, is basically a free pass not to get a ticket. Patrolman Benevolent Association, right? And so you put it in your window, and you don't get a ticket. So that was the exchange. Now, the question was. See, I thought about this often. Later, I discovered that this was the exchange. And I always felt that Stu thought that he gave the better gift. Because I always thought he thought that. And you might say, well, why did you think that? Because I always thought that I'll give you an example. I wanted to move out from my apartment. I was like 25 years old. His parents had moved out, and he had 3 bedrooms, and one was open, and there was another couple living there, and there's 1 bedroom open. I said, Stu, can you move in? And he didn't even answer, and again, I don't know why. He didn't answer, which kind of got me pissed off, but maybe he thought the PBA card was, again, I don't know. Again, I talked to another friend about this, and he said, nah, you're crazy. PBA card, they get them for free, but maybe he thought his gift was better. So not only do you have to have an exchange, but the gift, it's very important, is comparable. It's funny, I used to see my parents when they would get a gift for one of the weddings, of several weddings and bar mitzvahs. I had 5 brothers and sisters, and there were several weddings, and they used to write down the gift. I said, why are you writing down the gift? And now I know, because they would have to give a comparable gift, the reciprocal altruism, right? Now evolutionary psychology answers many questions of how, why, but it's not good at answering how questions. But here's a good how question. Now, if you're having trouble with a friend, getting into arguments, and and you're not working out, something's not right, you can be almost sure that this is the problem. There's an exchange problem, or someone made a friend, someone gave you something, gave you their time, or whatever it is, a value exchange, or gave a gift, and you didn't reciprocate, right? And you can almost be sure of that there's something there in your that you have not given back. So there's a problem. You probably violated, or they violated to you. You're angry at them. They probably violated to you, or the opposite is that they're angry at you. You probably violated it with them. Now, one interesting thing, and we'll close on this, is that in evolutionary genetics, see, one of the reasons, is called cheating. It's the idea that you do something for me, I do something for you. You do something for me, I do something for you. and we're both better off, right? But at a certain point, I might say, well, he's leaving or he's going to a different tribe. You know what I'm going to do? He's going to do something for me, and I'm not going to reciprocate. I'm going to be better off. You know why I'm going to be better off? Because I'm going to save some of my resources. I'm going to cheat. I'm not going to spend time, giving up my resources, and I'm going to be better because I'm going to have more genes. Now, so he's going to give up some of his resources to me, and I'm not going to give up some resources to him. It's called the evolutionary cooperation. It's called cheating, and this is a whole topic in itself. It's a very interesting topic. So the whole system breaks down if there's a cheater. So this is very important. Keeping people in line. Sort of like the mafia, you got to keep people. That's what the mafia is. You can't have people cheat. That's what the mafia is. Everything would work. There would be no need for a mafia. You got gangsters, and what they do is they're trying to cut up their spoils. And what happens? One inevitably is not paying the other guy, and they go to the mobster. He goes, "Godfather, please help me. I will help you. What is the problem? Tony Giacomo, and I'll talk to him. And you gotta pay me this stuff." Yeah. So that's what the mafia is. So this is something that's endemic. The cheating idea of cheating is a big problem, and so this is a very common thing. The idea of cheating. Not. Someone's in it, but people will say, my genes will flourish. No, they don't say that, but that's what it is. It's, if, someone does something for you, they've taken a cost into their genes. They've given up resources, which endangers their survival, and which in turn endangers their gene survival. So that's a big cost. And you've now improved your survival by them giving you resources, and you're further improving your survival by not risking giving up any more resources to them. So you're really doing well. But again, there is a cost. There could be costs set up by societies and cultures, and these have evolved too. Trying to get out of this, there are costs. Some cultures have evolved very bad costs. Who knows? It could be, killed for something like this. Probably come up with I'll think of a better example, but of course, unprepared as I usually am. I haven't. So, okay, so we're running at about 38 minutes today. Another excellent podcast. I wish there would be more views, but you people, you fundamentalists, saying, I don't like this Jew. He's arrogant. He thinks he knows everything. Not anything about Jesus. All right, well, I'm gonna go to the park because I have no Wi-Fi. I have to go to the park, but that's okay. And then I'm gonna get my pajamas. And plug in my Wi-Fi and lie down, read my book about the brief history of everyone who ever lived, and maybe get a snack and go to sleep. So you have a wonderful evening and a groovy night. And 39 minutes. Bye-bye.